Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. This is Bill Stevens. We're on Iron Radio. Another episode. I am a strength coach, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, youth sport coach, and maker of many fine things.
This is Coach Durrell out of Strength Guild in KC. I do, I'll just say foundational strength and conditioning, gym owner. Been doing lots of marketing fun stuff lately, and I think it's my first time back in a little while.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, and I'm Lonnie Lowry. I am adjunct prof. I was a full-time prof for about 20, 25 years in nutrition and ex-phys, former competitive bodybuilder, working on a couple of books here. So that's me.
Fun times.
By the way, everybody, we're just going to do a potpourri episode of what's in the news. Some of this is science news. Some of this is just all over the place, really. I want to get this one done, though, before I forget, because I'm doing this a little bit differently than normal. I'm trying to read this off a screen and stuff. But we have talked over the years about how when you're very fit and you're exercising all the time, it changes a lot of risk factors. And like, can you get away with lots of sugar and carbs because you're always draining your body's carb stores, you know, your muscle, liver, glycogen. It can be half to completely gone within an hour or two if you're training really hard. So glycogen economy is a word that used to come up. And there's a new study, partly from Harvard, that, well, here's the title: Sugar-Sweetened or Artificially Sweetened Beverage Consumption, Physical Activity, and Risk of Cardiovascular Disease in Adults. I got this partly through Science Daily. That was the actual science title I just gave you. Their title is Physical Activity is Insufficient to Counter the Cardiovascular Risk Associated with Sugar-Sweetened Beverages. So, wow. It says, contrary to popular belief, the benefits of physical activity do not outweigh the risks of cardiovascular disease when associated with drinking sugar-sweetened beverages, according to a new study. This is February of this year, spanking new stuff. Like I said, partly from Harvard, the T.H. Chan School of Public Health. A couple of quotes here. Well, first of all, let me back up. When I was in grad school in the 90s, we actually taught that there is no direct link between sugar and like heart disease or diabetes. They don't cause these things. And that language has really changed over the years. I mean, everything was so pro-carb before. Remember, we're talking like the anti-fat years. And that's really changed. So now here's a couple of quotes from the Science Daily piece. The marketing strategies for these drinks often show active people drinking these beverages. It suggests that sugary drink consumption has no negative effects on health if you're physically active. And our research aimed to assess this hypothesis, says one of the co-authors. Now, this reminds me of McDonald's, right? McDonald's, you'll see, or like might be vending machines, it'll say balance your lifestyle, balance physical activity with what you eat and drink. And what they're trying to suggest is buy our refined products and exercise it away, kind of. I mean, that's sort of it. For this study, scientists used two cohorts totaling around 100,000 adults. So this is a big study of other studies. They looked at data from like the Nurses' Health Study. We've heard about this stuff before. Yeah. Followed for 30 years. The data show that those who consumed sugar-sweetened beverages had a higher risk of cardiovascular disease regardless of their physical activity levels. It says the study found that even if the recommended 150 minutes of weekly physical activity protects against cardiovascular disease, it's not enough to counter, at least not fully counter, the effects of these drinks. It says for artificially sweetened drinks that are often presented as an alternative to sugar-sweetened beverages, their consumption was not associated with higher risk of cardiovascular disease. So replacing sugar-sweetened beverages by diet drinks could be good, according to some of these authors, at least because you're reducing the amount of sugar. When I went and pulled the full paper of which I gave you this study, it's Lorena Pacheco and colleagues, it looks like here. They're connecting it to inflammation, I think. You know, again, it looks like I know that Jarrell or somebody's going to ask, like, how hard are they training? What do you mean by physical activity? And it's not going to be like most of our listeners, I'm guessing. It looks like they're drawing a line somewhere around 7.5 MET hours per week. So 7 minutes is 7 times normal resting metabolism, times hours per week. And I haven't done a deep dive. But yeah, the bottom line is it says that sugar sweetened beverages associate with cardiovascular risk regardless of physical activity level. And it's an interesting piece. If anybody were to go get this, you can find it on Science Direct. It's the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, a real top tier one. But it does kind of answer that question. Can you, like a lot of companies suggest, exercise your butt off, kind of address this through a glycogen economy thing? Because, exercise is anti-inflammatory over time, too. Maybe not acutely. We all know we've been very inflamed and sore from exercise. Yeah. Over time, it's supposed to be helpful. And this is saying it mitigates a little bit. It's helpful, but it doesn't abolish it. So I just thought that was interesting and kind of relevant.
Yeah, my stance on this is I can believe that. I mean, I'll take two stances. There's a popular saying, you can't out-train a shitty diet. And I call bullshit on that because I've seen it 1,000 times. But I only call bullshit on that as far as the athletic performance end of things, not the health end of things.
Right.
Because I see tons of professional elite athletes who eat like complete shit. But that has zero to do with their health. I could believe that what they're doing can be great for their performance, but at the same time bad for their long-term health. And my stance on that they don't give a shit about their long-term health. They give a shit about their performance on the field and making $500 million. And I don't blame them. That's a risk they're going to take, which we talk about all the time. We talked about it on last week's show. When you're going to be an elite athlete, you have to mentally sit down with yourself and measure, okay, am I willing to do this to get that? There's my negative. And most of them are. Just like taking anything else. Like, if they're going to take Tren, you don't think they're going to drink fucking Coke.
Yeah. Right.
It's just they're willing to do that. They're willing to slam this sugar beverage that, yes, it will help your performance. It will probably hurt you in the long run as far as heart disease. That's okay. They're willing to give up those 5 years at the end of their life to earn $500 million right now. So that's where I would stand on it. I could believe that, yeah. I mean, and I can tell you, like right now, I've changed to a much lower, just, my carbs come from vegetables and stuff now. And my whole body feels better. My knees, my hips, my elbows, my shoulders, my performance is lower because I'm not eating to be 280 pounds. Could I squat more when I was 280? Yeah, I could squat damn near 800. And, but I was doing what I needed to do to move the bar.
Not health.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't doing it to be healthy. There was, good Lord, like we talked about on the show. When I came and went to my doctor when I was weighing 298, my blood was crude. Like I wasn't doing it for health. I was doing it to hit those numbers. I made the change after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I guess my question on it would be in terms of, so if that was like, let's say you were doing some sugary drink during your training, that was like the only thing you were doing in terms of your total sugar intake, how much of it would matter in the long run in terms of your overall diet profile?
Yeah.
Because, and look, I'm not an advocate for or against sugar. Actually, the thing I normally tell people is, best in terms of, because when we used to have to do CrossFit competitions where you had a high intensity, like multiple high intensity, essentially carb burning sessions. The one thing I was telling people was like, they have these little, like, I don't know, like it's almost like sweet potato paste or like almost like baby food. It's like that starchy carb was like the best. That's like the highest, or applesauce, stuff like that was like better than like, but for me, it's like, if it's a kid or something, it's like, can I get something in you during this process? Mm-hmm. Like, can I get, like, what can I actually get you to, take in and tolerate during like a hard training session or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even recommend it though for like, powerlifting, I generally have people, it's like, you just need to keep eating. Strongman is kind of the same, like throughout the day. Like I do recommend like snacks. I think, was it Nutty Bars or whatever, Phil, was yours? And the competition experience by itself, to me is like it just stands out as like a blip or a moment in time. But through most training process, I don't recommend anything. Like I don't have any like specific recommendations besides like maybe a banana or something like that. Most of that should come from what you take in outside of the gym, not like what you're doing in the gym. As far as when I work with folks, so
yeah, it'd be an interesting study. We'll never see it happen, but like habitual use versus targeted use of sugary stuff. Like there has to be a huge difference between somebody that drinks Cokes all day, every day, and somebody that does it like I'm going to slam a certain amount of sugars right before a hard training session.
Right. Gatorade. I mean, that's sugar.
I mean, there's plenty of people I see drink Gatorade all day and they don't do anything.
Right.
Compared to an athlete that has Gatorade during competition. There has to be a difference as far as, not just performance markers, but health markers. Like
there's
learning through it.
I agree. Like there's the spot time. I mean, Jarrell, you just got me thinking about like back in the day, during competition weekends, we would eat baby food as a carb source, and that's pretty refined stuff. But it's easily digestible. I've heard you say this a million times, Phil. Like it's not a time to introduce something weird, and end up bloated and all that kind of stuff. This is Nurses Health study, so it's like 65,000 females from the Nurses Health study, 39,000 plus men from the health professionals follow-up study. I'm guessing when these guys are doing sugar drinks, they're going full on Pepsi and Coke, like 50, 60 grams of high fructose corn syrup kind of thing.
Yep.
Now, as far as the results, for those people who want some numbers, I know we have some nerds. It says a total of over 13,000 cardiovascular disease events were ascertained during 3 million person years of follow-up. So that's the number of people times the number of years. Wow. This is a big study. Like I said, a study of other studies. Compared with those who never or rarely consumed sugar-sweetened beverages or artificially sweetened beverages, the hazards ratio for CVD, right, cardiovascular disease, for participants consuming greater than or equal to 2 servings per day was 1.21. So again, if your odds ratio is 1.00, even 100% normal, this is 1.21. So you can kind of think of it as, that's significantly elevated. And it was only 1.03 for those consuming the 2 or more beverages that were artificially sweetened. So just kind of a trend there, a little bump up kind of thing. And then again, they talk about people who don't meet physical activity guidelines, which they say was greater than or equal to 7.5 MET hours per week. So, yeah, but, nurses and doctors and that kind of stuff, yeah, I'm sure some of them are runners or lifters, but they're not going to be the bodybuilder, powerlifter types on average that we're talking about. Not with numbers this big, 60,000, 40,000.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they say regardless of physical activity levels. But, yeah, when it comes to hardcore people, you don't know. Like you said, that study's never going to be done.
No, because we are less than 1% of the population.
Yeah, nobody cares but us.
Yeah. So, which rightly so. But
it does make me think, though, what you said, Phil, when you weren't about health and now you're kind of leaning in that direction. This is also, if one of the mechanisms is inflammation from these huge blood sugar and insulin spikes that you're doing to yourself. As you age, I mean, inflammaging is a word I hear in science literature all the time now. So this is not going to be helpful, right? This is going to be a pro-inflammatory thing. Yeah, so just don't do it.
But I would urge anybody, as a coach, like if you're worried about long-term health at age 23, like if that's your number one goal in life, don't be an elite athlete. Just don't.
I mean, it's really hard to give that kind of advice, which is spot on. Yeah, but how do you not get in trouble? How do you be responsible by saying, throw health to the wind, buddy?
Yeah,
you're 23 years old. It's time to get huge.
I mean, if you're going to be like, you can't tell me there's anybody that walked out at any professional sport, be it football, baseball, basketball, powerlifting. It's like they all have health issues, be they orthopedic or other. You're not going to be 100% healthy and be any kind of elite athlete. It's just not. So if that's your number one goal in life from an early age, don't be an extreme athlete.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean,
there you go.
Even locally, even on the low level, like regional level that I was on, There was some local gym owners I remember. They ate all they ate was chicken breast and rice all the time. You know, the kind of bodybuilder type of thinking. Stayed small year after year, and after a decade or so, my brother and I are twice his size. Then we're 3 times his size. I'm exaggerating, but over the years, because he wouldn't eat. He was all about leanness and health, and it's like, and he was interested in competing in bodybuilding, but it's like, okay, you're a bantamweight, bro, and I went from middleweight to up to, you go through weight classes, light, heavyweight, etc. You can't do that if you're too obsessed about health. It's not synonymous with performance, that's for sure.
So, and there's no wrong answer. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. That's another reason why elite athletes are elite athletes. There's only a certain percentage of the population that's willing to give that up, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
okay. Well, I know we have a whole potpourri of stuff. Like I said, that one just caught my eye because you have heard that argument before. Can you, like you said, can you train away a crappy diet? And for performance and even leanness, up to a point, you can if you're really gifted.
Yep.
But yeah, you hit some other stuff.
Yeah, we'll hit up the microbiome stuff. Everybody's heard about it on the show from when I was a poop donor for a university, and my wife actually sent me a link to this the other day. There is a new place. It's called, I'll just give it out if anybody else wants to do it because I signed up yesterday, www.humanmicrobes.org. So right on the front of their page, it says providing stool donors for FMT. FMT is fecal microbiota transplants and research. They're working to find the fewer than 0.01% of people with healthy, unperturbed, disease-resistant microbes. And basically what they're looking for mainly, if you go through this thing, is people that are extreme athletes. Basically, athletes train a lot. And so what they're doing, pretty much they're poop brokers. And they are paying, you have to go through this and find out if you have the specific microbiome they're looking for. They will pay $500 a sample to send these out so people can do fecal transplants and have your healthy microbiome. Now, your chances of being that 0.01% are low, but I didn't know this was such a thing. Like, I've heard of fecal transplants and whatnot, and they're out here looking for thousands of people to sign up. And do this thing, and I couldn't think of a better way to make $500 than
no doubt
shipping out one of my turds.
Yeah,
so I did it for free for months.
It's awkward, right? I mean, to collect your poo, that's got to be. People don't think about with this when you hear about gut microbiome and all the different bacteria and bifidobacteria and all the good guys and lactobacillus. You don't think about the awkwardness of taking a dump in a little plastic bin.
Oh no, it was, but from somebody who did it. Like they have this down to a science. Like that university, the kit they sent me, it was interesting. They have a little thing that straps to your stool. Like you go on your regular toilet, and they have a deal that straps onto your toilet and collects it for you. And it was pretty interesting. So
worth getting paid
they
for.
They put
sure.
thought into this thing. I just thought that I had no clue that this was becoming such an in thing. Like that, it's getting other people's healthy microbiomes and inserting them into yours and hoping for the best.
Yeah. So, it's a sad commentary that such a tiny percentage of people have truly perfectly healthy gut microbiota, perfectly healthy intestinal poo, content. I know we were joking with Jarrell before the record button. He might be in the running for this. Young lifter.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They're mainly looking for people in their 30s. Young athletes have poop that can cure a huge variety of diseases. And it says, some Danish study says 3 out of every 700 donor athletes will be ideal. So highly effective donors. Also referred to as the super donor.
Super donor. Jarrell, you got to do it.
That's why, that you can see that's why the money. If there's only that many people. But like they're mainly looking for people that have good diets, don't take a bunch of antibiotics, aren't sick all the time, aren't smokers.
Exercise
regularly. So, and of course, you go through there's just like a 3-page questionnaire you go through, and I'm sure there's another steps. And at one step, it's going to be sending your poop out for them to test, to see if you even qualify. But I was like, hey, it's free. I might as well. So I signed up last night. So.
Let's find out. Yeah, let's find out.
The worst case scenario, you know how your microbiome is. So,
Yeah.
but
maybe you should contact and maybe I'll withhold her name. I don't know why I would, but I could remind you her email and you can.
I'm
reach
sure
out.
I have it. Yeah, and be like, what do you know about these people?
Yeah, well, she may know about your profile. Like,
Yeah.
Phil, you meet this profile.
Have email.
You know, like
have her drop a line for me.
Yeah, you got that fingerprint kind of where you are.
Exactly. So I've already been highly tested. Hey, I helped somebody get a doctorate. You know,
That's
they
right.
used me in their thing. So that's one of the crowning achievements of my life.
I'm so special. They use my shit
Yep.
for their dissertation.
Yeah, I mean, I was a cover model for a collegiate textbook and a turd donor.
That's right.
So for a university,
I am special.
Yep, I am fucking special. So,
Hey everybody, Iron Radio is back and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new Iron Radio / Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
Yeah. Blood flow restrictions. So I have a PT. Well, I have a few young ladies who are going through a PT program at a local university here. And one of them she has to do some kind of research thing. And she was thinking about doing blood flow restriction and trying to tie it to physical, like actually repairing joint, muscle, tendon, something or other. And she wasn't really sure where she was kind of getting started. And I told her actually to look towards the meatheads. Like, they're doing the silliest stuff first. They're on the front lines of things, and then you can kind of apply it. But I was curious. I mean, I don't have, like, I know it's a thing, and I do it for, like, I wouldn't even say it's directly blood flow restriction, but, use the mobility floss to, like, help out some joints or tendons, ligaments, whatever. But I was curious what you guys' thoughts were on its therapeutic use versus its, muscle building use, and maybe what you guys think about it in general. I don't use it that often, to be honest. So
I can see how it could help. I mean, just like I could see like the flossing and things like that. Basically, you're going to get extreme blood flow in and blood flow out, which I think could, flush things from damaged tissue potentially and things like that. I mean, I don't use it like to get swole and make gains. I just never. I mean, aside from, I guess you could say I do because I'll put on a suit and like they did those tests on people that are multiply. And, you throw on a multiply suit, then you throw on wraps, and, like, they were getting 100% occlusion to the ankle at that point. But that was performance-based. 100%. That wasn't for any health benefit. It sucks to get into suits. But I could see I could see it helping on the therapeutic side of things, maybe more than the performance or muscle building side of things. I could see where that could be potential. I have no study to back me up, but my mind can wrap around that.
I'm digging as we speak right now on PubMed. There's a bunch of 2023 and 2024 papers about it, not just clinical, but clinical and just fitness related stuff. Here's one by, oh my God, I can't even pronounce this person's last name. Hjortshoe, Hjortshoe and colleagues, 2023. It's called Hormonal, Immune, and Oxidative Stress Responses to Blood Flow Restricted Exercise. There's just a ton of stuff. Some of this, if I remember right, because I saw this when I was in Houston, I did a little report on it if anybody wants to go to our YouTube backup, Iron Radio YouTube page. There's some indication that it might be helpful. especially in certain situations. Yeah, maybe rehab. I mean, in space flight, they're looking for anything to make it more efficient because you can't exactly lift weights when there's no gravity. There's a bunch of that kind of stuff. But I was never able to get into this kind of stuff personally because it just seemed like too much of a hassle. Mm-hmm. You got to get the tension right. And it's not like you're completely tourniqueting off your limb and turning it blue, but even mildly, it just feels like an extra pain in the butt, that you've got this thing going on and off while you're trying to do your lifts. And I think Mike Nelson, when he comes back on, he's back on the show, he might have a different opinion of this. I've never had enough interest. I mean, the gains would have to be truly remarkable for me to screw around with, putting Dynabands on my armpits and,
I mean, I can put it together in my head where, like Arnold talked about chasing the pump. We've all done that. You do enough work, you get this crazy pump. The average person in a PT situation is not going to train hard enough to get that. It's a way that you could get them there without having to work so hard. If that makes sense, you're going to artificially create this pump situation easily through occlusion.
Well, that's what I meant about that's why the NASA people are into it, right? Yeah. Or I can see it for rehab.
And that's where I can see it being helpful. I can easily see that. I can easily see the rehab helpfulness of it more than I can the muscle building side of it, aside from just being lazy. Hey, I want to get a pump. I don't want to work that hard. Give me that. And I get a pump real quick, and then I go to the bar and try and impress women.
Right. Do 20 reps, man.
Yeah. You'll get there eventually with the work, and are you going to do as much tissue damage as you would by just doing the work? I don't know, man. So
I'm trying to remember, I seem to recall there's some GH and IGF-1 things going on, but the data that I've heard, and I've spoken to my buddy Josh about this, what I saw even at the NASA conference. I mean, obviously there was a company selling their blood flow occlusion technique, right? Because they want money.
Yep.
I think Josh and I were saying, well, you got to be careful not look at just the positive literature, a cherry-picked lit review kind of thing. You want to make sure. And I think overall that a lot of the claims get exaggerated. That's just my personal vibe as I read this kind of stuff. But yeah, to your point, there's a lot of those alternate training things like vibration platforms. Yeah. You can activate motor units better on a vibration platform. Well, I've tried those. I mean, I walked over 135 on my back in the university weight room. I'm standing on this vibration platform trying to squat. Way weird. Weird.
Yeah.
And because you're trying not to kill yourself. You're up on this platform. But the point being is, if you're injured, that might be great. Am I going to train like that?
No. That's I squatted once on a cruise ship and I almost died. Because you don't understand. I couldn't feel the ship moving. But once I had 405 on my back, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Because the slight shifts of the boat. Again, you're talking that stuff in a therapeutic setting is totally different than a performance setting. So, I think you're right, Drell. I mean, she can talk to these people, and I think all that type of stuff would be better in a therapeutic setting than it would a performance setting. And
and part of what I only made me talk to her about it was because I think Chuck Vogelpohl did an interview recently, and he was talking about not skipping training sessions, and he was like, if I had something that ached or whatever, I just go in and get a bunch of blood, pump into it, and then would be able to train. And I've heard that a few times. I mean, a lot of the West Side guys had said stuff like that, like, oh no, just get a bunch of blood to it or whatever. Now they would obviously do a bunch of crazy stuff, but so if the goal was to improve the tissue and quality, the training aspect, I have never been a fan because anything that just you have to add to a training process to me is just a pain in the ass. So I don't even like doing knee wraps and stuff. I prefer, maybe knee sleeves, but I would prefer just to train. I don't like to put a bunch of stuff on and I'll do all this. So I would hate that. And that would just ruin the flow of the training session. But in terms of, improving your, knee or something like that, I mean, it seems like it would, theoretically seems like it would work.
Yes. Well, and that's one thing that we have to make very clear here. Lonnie was on the bodybuilding side of things. So I could see where it would be more useful in that side of things, that type of training. Whereas me and Jarrell very much more fall on the performance side of things. Like, I want you to have blood flow to your muscles. Our athletes need as much blood flow as they can get. We want you to recover within a few seconds and be able to do it again. So blood flow restriction would hamper that. Like, the reason we put on wraps and powerlifting things has nothing to do with blood flow.
Right.
More to do with joint stability. And let's not lie. I've got wraps that I train with all the time that are very lightweight. I don't train with my competition wraps, aid my lift. They do. And, I wear them only in competition. And I use as much equipment as I can use within the confines of the rules. And I'm an idiot if I don't.
Right.
Because the other guy's going to use those. I can get 50 pounds out of my wraps on a squat.
Yeah.
The problem with that is your back has to be able, the rest of your structure has to be able to support that added weight you're getting from your knees. And that's where most people fail. Like, I've seen people throw on wraps and they just cave in the upper back and mid back. But so the rest of your system has to be able to support that equipment aid. But
yeah,
that's a different topic.
There are dozens of papers I think she can find on PubMed. Here's one I can pronounce the name. Chloe French and colleagues, Frontiers in Physiology 2024, The Effects of Lower Limb Ischemic Preconditioning, a systematic review. It says ischemic preconditioning involves the use of repeated occlusions and reperfusions of the peripheral muscle blood supply at a limb. It's just what you were saying, Phil. The systematic literature reviews typical responses. Here's the deal. There is variation in the method of application. The average occlusion pressure was 222 millimeters of mercury for 3 or 4 occlusion cycles. The distribution of this pressure is influenced by the cuff width, although 8 studies failed to report the cuff width. And the results highlighted the disparities and conflicting findings in response to these studies. So they're still looking for that optimal protocol. But it does look like something that's legit enough to have plenty of attention in the National Library of Medicine. So even though I was not a skill-oriented person, I can't imagine trying to do skill-based Olympic lifting and have these rubber bands hanging off my armpits and my my inguinal crease there by my crotch. But even in bodybuilding, it's just sort of awkward. No, I'm there for kind of a training experience, even because of the bodybuilding, and I feel like this would screw with that more than it would.
You get habitual in your lifting. And like, it took me when I moved at 43 or whatever the hell it is, moved to putting on even a single ply suit. Like, my training had to change, and the tempo of my training and everything, and getting used to that was a struggle for me. Like, I can't do my normal pace where it's just go. I had to fucking help me get my shoulder straps up, help me, and
yes,
that it was annoying for a while until it took me months to get used to that part of it. And that's why I just never, I tried training in a bench shirt and I was like, screw it. I don't like bench enough anyways. I'm just going to be a single ply lifter without a shirt because it just sucked. But, yeah.
Yeah. We got sugary drinks and we have gut microbiome and occlusion training.
I got one more if we want to hit on it.
Let's do that.
A neat conversation this week about it came up again how in high schools cleans are considered safe and deadlifts are the devil. And for many of these high school strength coaches, and I kind of went off, and it's like the worst lift I've seen, like here in Kansas, for some reason, powerlifting in high schools is still squat, bench, clean. And the connection in my mind is like, how can you think that a clean is safe and a deadlift isn't, when literally a clean is kind of the same? It's basically a deadlift that then you dynamically throw into the air and then have to catch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're still lifting. Like, a deadlift is lift a bar dead on the floor to the hip. A clean is lift a bar from dead on the floor to the hip and then throw it. But one is seen as safe and one is seen as the devil. And I was like, you're an idiot if you buy into this. I mean, well, and that's exactly what I said. I said, you're one of two things. You're ignorant and ill-informed, or you're just potentially a dangerous idiot. One of the two. And now we can get into it, and I didn't in this thing. Like now a good clean form, the lift on a good clean from the floor to the hip is damn near the opposite of a deadlift. And arguably the clean form is more dangerous as far as shear forces on your back and everything. But, I mean, that's the other argument towards it. But still, essentially, it's the same lift done, albeit lighter, because you have to throw it. But in my mind, the most dangerous part I've seen, because at the high school level, nobody is teaching these correctly.
Right.
It's not the lift from the hip, from the floor to the hip. It's the catch that kills these kids. You know, like that is the much more dangerous part. They're going into this weird sumo back into overextension catch thing. It's like, I just can't grasp mentally how this is seen as a safer lift, especially the way they teach it. I mean, they're teaching the cleans. Both of the lifts are an inherently very safe lift when taken the time to teach people how to do it correctly. The one is much more dangerous. The more complex lift is drastically more dangerous than the one that they have labeled evil, in my mind. Guys' thoughts on it?
I like the cleans, but I mean, even if you're training, okay, so if you're going to train the cleans and that's a part of your program, then one of the two assistance exercises for the clean are like for us, it'd be like a clean pull, or I do clean speed pulls, and then clean, deadlift essentially. So
yeah.
I don't really have because if you just did cleans, it's fine. Like, part of it would be, the argument would be like, okay, so if let's say you had let's say your deadlift was 500 pounds, your average clean weight that you're actually picking up off the ground would be, maybe 50% of that, right? So if you're provided you're proficient, which is a huge if, it's not like a guarantee. And then it's yeah, if that's the case and you're moving out, because you're just doing what, your deadlift can go up from that, just because you're doing the speed work, you're pulling something fast off the ground for, usually more reps, typically. But I don't understand the distinction, because, the best assistance exercises for cleans and snatches are clean and snatch deadlift. So
yes,
I don't really understand that.
It
all comes down to a teaching problem.
Exactly. And the thing I don't get, I don't want to come off as wrong. I think cleans are very useful and they're a great lift, and I coach them. I think deadlifts are very useful and a safe lift, and I coach them. The problem comes down to a teaching problem. And in my mind, I'm a power lifter. We deadlift in competition. But from a coaching aspect and a simplicity aspect, teaching my daughter how to deadlift was like teaching her how to drive my Toyota Corolla. Whereas teaching her how to do a correct clean is more like teaching her how to drive a sports car. It's a more complex lift. And they're saying that one's better for essentially these high school coaches that have strength coaches in high school generally have zero background in teaching weightlifting. They're usually the football coach that has just been, hey, guess what? You're the strength coach.
Oh, totally.
And
oh, my God.
So you're giving the keys to this person to teach these kids how to do a much more complex lift than a deadlift, and saying it's more safe. It makes no sense to me.
Well, can I ask you guys, what is the collegiate obsession? Because I really started seeing this in the early 2000s with cleans. I mean, what's the evidence that cleans are going to improve performance on a football field more than, let's say, traditional powerlifting lifts? I get it. It's more ballistic. It's more explosive.
But I think that's it. And in my mind, like Darrell got into, what do Olympic lifters do generally to bring their cleans up? It's not more cleans. It's more deadlifts, more squats, more of this distance work that are basic moves. I think, in my mind, deadlifts are a better way to build strength, and cleans are a better display of strength and power.
Okay.
I think they're a good display of strength and power. Like, if you can clean 315 to your shoulders, you're a strong, dynamic athlete. Whereas if you can deadlift 315, you're almost average.
More average. Yeah.
So I'll say this, and this is I'm gonna file it under like the whatever the kettlebell guys call like the what the hell effect, because especially in that I started kind of tinkering with it with kids. Like so my youngest, just turned 7. The youngest lifter here just turned 7, and mostly somewhere between 7 and kind of through sophomore year of high school. That's like the majority of my lifters right now. And there is a study that somebody just mentioned about there being like a 5% bump in performance for Olympic lifting programs versus traditional programs. Mm-hmm. Haven't looked into it, but I'll check that out at some point. Maybe we'll talk about it on the show. But when I have kids literally just practice the lifts and we go through the deliberate process of like, I have a system of like kind of teaching it. They learn everything else faster. Like everything else is much easier to teach. Like the toes and go, and we're doing all these like rhythm drills and like stuff like that. If like the kids who come in consistently and they snatch and they do cleans, and I've done, 2 groups where it's like, all right, this kid only comes in twice a week. I don't want to waste time with the Olympic lifts. But then I just started seeing the kids who were doing the Olympic lifts just improving faster. Mm-hmm. And I remember having one of my kids a long time ago, he just started back up again, Nixon, and he just wanted to do weightlifting. So we just did weightlifting. And I had some other kids that were coming in at the same time, similar age, and we were doing strength and conditioning because they're only coming 2-3 times. And there was one day that they were just like kind of randomly doing box jumps and just like messing around. And then Nixon, who I haven't had do any box jumps at all, nothing. Like I don't do that stuff for weightlifters necessarily. And he bounced over there, and he was doing it way easier than they were. Yeah. Like even just the process of getting like moving your feet to get on the box, and he was like, and he's just getting on the 30-inch box when he was like, I don't know, it was probably like 11.
Yeah.
And these other kids who were maybe even a little older at the time were like, scraping their shins almost on the 24-inch, like barely getting on there. And so I've seen it in this way, but I don't have a reason for it to be that much better besides like a what the hell effect.
Yes, but I would argue, I would agree with everything you're saying. It teaches these kids how to move. But the problem is you're coaching it correctly. And most people aren't. Even at the collegiate level. Like I had one kid come to me all summer. He was in a football program. And I taught him how to do cleans correctly. And he went back to his his college conditioning program to get ready for the football season. And the coach told him, quit doing your cleans like that CrossFit way. Do them right. Which meant he needed to put straps on, shake back and forth like a weeble wobble, and throw it in the air and catch it wide feet. He literally wanted him to do them wrong. But I will say, like, it's something you brought up, Lonnie, is any kid I have come in that I know wants to compete in a sport at a collegiate level, I make sure we take time to teach them how to do cleans correctly because I know they will be doing them in college. So I try and make them proficient at them because I know the strength coach in college, it's going to be a big part of your training diet.
Yeah, get to them first.
So I try to at least to make them proficient at that move because like you're going to be doing this in college, they love them. So let's learn how to do it right so you're a step ahead. So
I had a kid come back, just like a little story. Speaking of that, kid come back from college, and they were doing like barbell complexes or whatever. With some snatches. And, I had taught him to snatch a little bit, not much, because I didn't have him for very long. It was mostly the other coach's athlete. And came back and, because I taught, hook grip and all that stuff.
Yep.
The coach there told him to not only not hook grip, but like suicide grip, basically. Like not
Jesus.
even
thumbs.
thumb around the bar. Yeah, no thumbs. And I was like, on snatches. I was like, for what?
Yeah.
I didn't even understand. He didn't explain it to me very well. Like, I don't think the coach knew what
Yeah.
the hell. I was,
Just to up the danger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, man, that sounds so sketchy.
Yeah.
How would you? But yes, just speaking of that kind of story. But yeah, I don't prioritize it. I try to eliminate the Olympic lifts or I try to with, some of the youth athletes because it's like if I only get them twice a week, then I'm like,
You only have so much time.
I don't want to spend as much time. But I mean, every time I do that and I have someone who comes in, I almost get reminded that it's like if I just go through the process of teaching the lifts and then we do some strength stuff with it, they'll get better faster. And this is just what I've noticed.
Yep.
Over time. I have nothing to base this on, prove it on, or anything like that. There is that study, but maybe we'll talk about that next week. But yeah, I don't have anything to like say, plant my flag and say this is the best.
Well,
type thing.
That makes me feel better, Gerald, because I remember a couple of weeks ago, you're like, Lonnie, what are you talking about? This evidence stuff, or using words. Don't use biology words. The truth is, I guess I can answer that question partly like, why do I see that all the time? It's like we said a couple of weeks ago, it's tradition. They don't want to look at the evidence. Oh, cleans, I don't know, less injuries or more wins or more whatever it is on the football field. They're not thinking with that kind of sciencey mindset. They're just doing cleans because they've always done them, and it never even occurs to any of them that they could probably mix that up. Like, how about just pure powerlifting training in the off season?
The average coach at the high school, and sadly a lot of them at the collegiate level, the reason they're doing what they're doing usually boils down to like one thing. It's like, we do it this way because Nebraska did it that way in 1989. Right. Yep. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's not evidence based, right? No. So I guess I'm a radical in that way. Like, how about we do evidence based stuff so things progress over time? But no, and I'm not completely batching tradition either. I mean, there's some reasons for that. Those are observations. They're a little less systematic. But my problem with a lot of this stuff is sort of what you guys were touching on is, because I've seen this at small universities, the head coach does the lifting. And they're literally like getting crap off the internet, out of magazines. And I'm like, that's how you design your strength conditioning program? Like, what are you doing? So once I taught strength conditioning, and a lot of that stuff is the physiology. And I told them, listen, hypertrophy physiology, I'm going to focus on a lot of that. We brought in a strength coach to do some of the skill and, observations and all that kind of stuff. Because I'm like, I am not going to pretend like coaching is a different major from physiology, But I actually had them go write little critiques of what the different head coaches were doing on the different sports teams. And some of it, what they brought back, what they were doing, just blew my mind. Just ignorant beyond belief, So I hear what you guys are saying. Like, get to them early, get some healthy skill habits going, because they could be walking. Now, big schools, less of a problem. They're going to have a whole strength conditioning staff. Hopefully, they know what they're doing. But smaller universities, forget it, man.
And that would be my tip to if you're a listener that's a parent, a coach at a high school, if you're dealing with a kid in some way that wants to go to collegiate sports, just get their form right on all the basic lifts. That's the best thing you can do for them. So before they are in that system and get taught wrong, at least they can come in already knowing, because they're going to do this stuff. So, but.
Well, that's a lot of stuff today.
Yeah.
All over the map.
All right,
guys.
Ready to go train. So,
right on.
Everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community.
The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.